Coach Stanard, I'm just curious. It seems like, of course, Eddie is always a guy who is disruptive, and you know what he's going to get. It seems like the last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe, he's getting a lot of those tackles for loss, sacks, disruptive plays. Do you think anything changed there, or was it just kind of a matter of time for him?
Well, I think he's getting more and more comfortable in what we're doing, and I've been encouraged the last game by our energy level, our whole front four. I thought OC went in, did a nice job too. I think they're getting more and more comfortable. They're bringing good energy. And we've leaned on them a little bit with some of the injuries we've had in the back seven, especially in the back end. We've leaned on those guys to say, hey, that your productivity's got to increase, and we tried to adjust the game plan to put them in a position to be more effective up front.
Do you think that is just being more comfortable, where, like you said, Siosi had a good game, Uso had one of his best games of his career probably? Is it just settling in and kind of being more familiar with what you're doing, or is it just the progression of over the course of the season that kind of led to that?
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail right on the head. Yeah, as they're becoming more and more comfortable and they're learning the expectations, technique-wise and effort level, they're starting to settle in. I think both Pete and AJ have done a really good job continuing to develop those guys and coach them over the season.
Brent, I wanted to ask about Jake Malhart. It seemed like the last 2 games he's kind of been picking things up, and you look at him and you can see the potential there with a big kid with huge hands. What have you seen as far as his progression, I guess, throughout the season?
Well, Jake's he's worked really hard at his craft. I think for him, back in the spring and last year, getting off the ball versus press was a challenge to him, but he's turned that to an advantage with his size. He's been really difficult to handle in man-to-man situations, and it just so happens the last couple of weeks maybe some of those opportunities have shown up a little bit more, and he's been able to make some real big plays. But Jake's a competitor now, and he's a very hard worker, and he's taken to coaching, and it's been real neat to see him progress through the season.
How much has he kind of bought into everything, where, like you said about him being a competitor, you look at run plays and he's always the last guy holding his blocks. Some DBs don't like him so much, it seems like.
Yeah.
How much has he kind of bought into everything that you guys are doing?
Tremendously. And he's a shining example out there for the way we want those guys to play. And the receivers as a unit really scrapped, and we asked them to block quite a bit, and they've done a good job. And like you said, Jake's that one probably scrapping as much as anybody, and been real pleased with that.
What have you seen as far as the offensive line, where obviously they've had a couple of games in a row together, which you couldn't always say this season, just continuing to, I guess, become more familiar in that group together?
Well, I think going back the last probably 3 games in particular, I think that group has learned to finish much more. We've had more knockdowns. We've been better on double teams. We've pass protected better. I think that's figuring out what we want a little bit, but it's also playing together. You talk about the double teams, the pass protection aspect. The progress there has been tremendous, and I think you plug a true freshman in, and you see Ryan's progress through that stretch has been significant. But I think the other 4 guys have certainly picked up their energy level and their play as well.
I want to ask about Jalen also, where he's a guy who obviously a senior coming in, has a lot of leadership, more of a quiet guy, not the biggest guy in the world, but what have you seen as far as his leadership and being able to kind of be a quiet presence in that
Well,
group?
he's a leader by example. He works his tail off, and he is probably the smallest guy we have out there playing on offense, but he competes as hard as anybody. Him and Jake are kind of opposite sides of the size spectrum, but they're both scrappy in the same way, and Jalen is not afraid to stick his nose in there from a blocking perspective, and he obviously presents a big play potential for us as well. So, Jalen's going to be a guy that whenever this season does come in, it'll be sorely missed.
Steve, it seems like there's been a couple games this year where you've had the slow starts defensively, and then you seem to adjust. If you look at Air Force or San Jose and then Utah, what leads to that, where you've been able to take some punches but not shut down, I guess, as a group and be able to make some adjustments?
I think the players are learning to handle the adjustments on the sideline. And going over there, I've been encouraged for the last few weeks how they've been more attentive to the adjustments that we're making on the sideline, and they're starting to see things better. At the beginning of the year, we'd bring them off to the sideline, and they couldn't probably communicate as well as they can now as far as what was going on the field. And that's part of, developing the baseline that I was talking about and understand exactly what we are doing defensively. And so it's nice now that you can get Devin and Lucas and the other players, Blair and those guys over there, and they can tell you exactly what they saw, where maybe earlier in the season they didn't know exactly what they were seeing. They were just trying to get lined up and play. So that's been very helpful. And same thing for us as a defensive staff. AJ and John Richardson and I have been together, but we have Pete now and David Brown. And so it's been a work in progress, both as a staff and as a unit. And I think we're making strides. Sometimes it feels like a herd of turtles, but I've been encouraged.
Coach Vigen, can you reflect on Brian Hill's performance? He rushed for more yards than anyone has against Utah State's defense this year. Can you just reflect on his performance at Friday?
Well, I think the biggest thing that showed up Friday night is it's going to take more than one guy to get him down. He had some easier opportunities on some of those big runs against Fresno where he got out in the open, but it was a different variety on Friday night, and he ran his tail off as far as just, it took 2-3 guys consistently to get him down, and unfortunately we weren't able to really get him out in the open field a whole lot. I think he only had one run of 15 plus, and that's a credit to the discipline that Utah State plays with. They had guys where they needed to be, and were able to get that third and fourth guy there. But for a guy that's really played in 3 games to have over 500 yards rushing, and of all kind of variety, the tough inside yards, but then also the outside and the variety where he's showing his speed too. He's going to have a chance to be real dynamic here if he already hasn't been.
Coach Vigen, how impressed have you been, or what's your evaluation of the tight end group? Where obviously you didn't really know coming into the season if you're going to have the right guys there, but it seems like all 3 of those guys that have played, when they throw it to them, they catch the ball, and they also are willing blockers.
Yeah, it's been a position by committee. I think they all have different strengths and weaknesses, and we've tried to accentuate those strengths and hide those weaknesses as a group. And they've all played real hard, and I think the one thing you see is they've really improved throughout the season. The fact that a couple of them are sophomores is encouraging, that those guys can continue to grow and develop in this offense. And looking back when we were looking at the roster back in January, I didn't know how we would scrap that position together, but we've been fairly pleased with how that's went so far.
Coach Vigen, I want to talk a little bit about Colby. He was putting the ball up there a lot of times, and it seemed like he was really going deep. It just seemed like those 2 picks that were deep, there were scoring chances right there, they become touchdowns. It's a totally different ball game. As the OC, take me kind of into Colby's mind after a game like Friday night where you got to try and get his mind focused. What is kind of going through his mind, and how are you trying to basically get him back into that right mindset to make those INTs, TDs?
Well, the one thing about Colby, he's certainly owned up to his mistakes all season, and has gone back to work. The first one was a misread in coverage. That's a mistake that he can't make, point that out to him, and I think he knew right away. It wasn't a matter that I have to point anything out. He knew it as soon as we talked on the sideline. The second one was a batted ball, falls in the arms of their nose guard, and I don't know. It was a good defensive play, but I know he knows that each time down there, it's premium for us to score points and certainly not turn the ball over. We'd much rather leave with 3 than 0. And I think by and large he's done a really good job down there. It just so happened at 2 critical points in time in the fourth quarter we came up short, and he'll own up to it, and he'll do his best this next week to correct that.
It doesn't take too much time for him to kind of just get rattled. It's quick to regroup then?
No, you look at that game, he threw the first interception in the fourth quarter. They flipped the field, and then our next 2 plays was a 50-plus and a 25-plus pass play by him, and we're right back down there. And so no, he's been able to own up and bounce right back and have thick skin, or whatever you want to say, and that's been a real pleasant, I don't want to say surprise, but that's what you're looking for in a quarterback. A guy that's got a short memory, but a guy that doesn't make the same mistakes twice. So you know, it kind of works both ways a little bit.